Hello friends and fellow bibliophiles, welcome back to Kat's Novel Adventures. In today's video, I am sharing everything I read in October. October was a busy reading month for me. I participated in 4 readathons, a reading event on Instagram, 3 book clubs, as well as a buddy read. As far as my ratings, I read a total of 13 books. 4 of those books were picture books, and I read 70 pages of a book with a total of 595 pages. Yes, you heard that correctly. So I started a book but did not get to finish it, and we'll talk about that book in a second. As far as my star ratings, I had 1 3-star, 1 3.5-star, 4 4-stars, and 7 5-stars. So the book that I did not finish is Armadale by Wilkie Collins. I chose this as part of my Victober TBR, and I started it at the beginning of the month, and I did not finish it. Like I said, I only got to page 70. There's 595 pages, and the reason is the format of the book. I'll be honest with you. This font is so small. It's like every page is really 2 or 2.5 pages long. And I'll also admit that the chapters are not very short either. So I really want to finish this by the end of the year for 2 reasons. 1, so that I did not epically fail Victober, because I spent time with this book. I did not get to any of the other books on my TBR. And secondly, this happens to be one of my 24 books for 2024. So I'm really hoping that I am going to be able to finish it by the end of December. So wish me luck. The second readathon that I participated in was Halloween-A-Thon. This was created by my bestie Kelsi at Slime and Slashers. This ginormous event kicked off on September the 22nd, which was the first day of fall, and ran all the way through until October the 31st. It included a readathon, watchathon, as well as an activity-thon. So everything that I read in the month of October counts for Halloween-A-Thon. I had so much fun participating in Halloween-A-Thon and enjoyed being part of the Monster Squad. And in addition to all of the books that I read in October for this event, I also watched 11 movies, and Kelsi and I had a live chat on her channel discussing the movies that we had in common, all spoiler free. So I have left a link in the description box below if you're interested in checking out our chat about some spooky movies. I read 3 books for Spooky Scary Skeleton Halloween, which was a month-long readathon hosted by my friend Nicole at Nicole's Bookish Nook. She had 8 spooky prompts, and my 3 books counted for 4 of those prompts. And the first book is The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. This counted for prompt number 6, which was to read a book set in October. And the second prompt was to read a book with a black cover. I think that was prompt number 8. Anyway, this also happens to be the 3rd book and the final book in the Indian Lake trilogy. We are back in Proof Rock, Idaho. It's been 4 years since the tragic events surrounding the serial killer Dark Mill South. And oh my goodness, Stephen Graham Jones did not let me down. It was an emotional roller coaster. I shed quite a few tears. The story was fast-paced, it was gripping, and also gruesome. There were a lot of kills, a lot of deaths in this final book. I also think that, like the other 2 books, this is an homage to slasher films, and the ending was incredible in my opinion. I am going to miss Jay Daniels dearly, as well as Proof Rock and all its residents. I ended up giving it 5 stars. Prompt number 3 was to read a book with an orange cover or with orange in the title, and I chose Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. Very excited to get to this book because It was on my list of books to read for my Year of Christie last year. It was recommended to me by my friend Katrina at Katrina Brown. I didn't get to it last year, so I ended up putting it on my Year of Christie 2.0 list, and I finally got to it. This, of course, is a murder mystery by Agatha Christie, and it features Hercule Poirot. The story begins where people are prepping for a Halloween party, and there is a young girl there named Joyce who is bragging about witnessing a murder at some point in her life. Of course, nobody is really listening because they don't believe her, for one thing. A lot of people think that she tells tall tales, and also they think that she is bringing it up just to impress Ariadne Oliver, who happens to be a mystery writer at this party. Well, later on at the actual party, they find Joyce murdered in the library. Mrs. Oliver happens to be friends with Hercule Poirot, and she calls him and asks him to come to the little village to do some investigating. I love Agatha Christie's mysteries. I also enjoy spending time with Hercule Poirot. I think he's a lot of fun. This was my introduction to Mrs. Oliver. I thought she was feisty. She also provided a lot of humor throughout the story. I think it was very enjoyable. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and of course, I did not guess the killer. My next book counted for prompt number 4, read a book with ghosts or ghouls, and I chose Scritch Scratch by Lindsay Curry. This is a middle grade horror novel, and it follows Claire, who is not a fan of the paranormal, despite the fact that her dad runs a ghost-themed Chicago bus tour. She is not very happy when one evening one of the employees decides they can't go on the tour with her dad, and no one else in her family can substitute. So she pretty much has to go in the employee's place. So she's not thrilled, like I said, because she's not a fan. She's more of a science gal, and I don't know, she has all these like little fears, and I think part of it is because of the scary story she's constantly hearing her dad talk about. So anyway, they go on the bus tour. Everything is going smoothly until Claire notices a strange boy in the back of the bus, and no one else can see him. And then suddenly he disappears. So at first, Claire is a little bit confused, and she just decides, well, it must be my wild imagination because I'm listening to my dad's ghost stories. Well, that's all good and well until some really strange things happen once she gets home, and the strange little boy starts following her. I enjoyed this ghost story with its blend of history and mystery. In fact, I was pretty surprised about the historical influence in this book. There is a good author's note after the story that kind of explains the inspiration that prompted the author to write about the forgotten history of Chicago. And she does have some resources that you can look at in case you are interested in learning more about the events that took place that inspired Scritch Scratch. I thought the characters were likable. I really enjoyed the relationships between Claire and her family, as well as Claire and her friends. And I think it's a story about facing your fears and also embracing the unknown. I really did enjoy it. This was my first read by Lindsay Curry, but I do think I'm going to read more by her. I ended up giving this story 4 stars. I also have to mention that I read Scritch Scratch as a buddy read with my friend Kaelin. We kind of chatted over text, and we both seemed to enjoy it. And then it also counted for my friend Stormi's readathon called Halloween, which is a month-long readathon, and it took place all throughout October. And she had 2 prompts, and one of the prompts was trick and the other one was treat. This one counted for the trick prompt. Now for Halloween, the only other book that I would consider a trick would be my next book. It is a mystery. It's not so much that it's spooky. It does have a spooky element. There is a phantom horse. There's also some danger and mysterious occurrences due to some characters that have some tricks up their sleeve. And that book is The Secret of Shadow Ranch by Kaelin Keene. This is the first book in the Nancy Drew series. We have Nancy fly into Arizona to visit Shadow Ranch, where she is going to spend some time with her friends Bess and George, whose uncle and aunt actually own Shadow Ranch. Well, when she first arrives, the girls are upset because they tell Nancy that some mysterious occurrences are happening on the ranch, and some of them are proving to be dangerous. Nancy finds out that the locals in town think the ranch is haunted, that it's cursed. And Nancy also finds out that there might be some buried treasure on the property. So Nancy thinks that is really what's causing the chaos, and she offers to investigate. Well, what could be better than a Western mystery? I mean, come on, y'all. Know how much I love my Gunsmoke Westerns. And paired with my favorite amateur sleuth, Nancy Drew. I mean, there's horses, there's cattle, there are cowboys, and also dangerous outlaws. And let's not forget about the buried treasure. Now I'm wondering, with a buried treasure, would it be considered more of a treat? I mean, I think it is a real treat that I get this combination of a mystery and a Western, but like I mentioned, there are some characters, some unsavory characters with some tricks up their sleeve. I found this story enjoyable. It's fast-paced, it's action-packed, there is suspense. I also love that Nancy really shows some true grit in the story. She really is becoming more comfortable and confident in her role as a detective. I also love the fact that we are introduced to Bess and George for the first time. They're sweet girls, and they, of course, assist Nancy in the investigation. And I also love the fact that this is the first mystery where they have gone outside of River Heights and the surrounding area. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The next 6 books count for the treat prompt, and the first up is In the Haunted House, an engaging picture book written by Eve Bunting and illustrated by Susan Maddow. This is the house where scary ones hide. Open the door and step softly inside. We follow a young girl and her father as they tour a dark, mysterious house. This book is a fun read for the spooky season. It is told in rhyme and features plenty of spooky characters. I love the amusing illustrations. I really got a kick out of seeing only the sneakers of the little girl and the father as they tour the house, and there's a little bit of mystery running through. The ending made me chuckle. I had so much fun with this story, I ended up giving it 5 stars. I read another book written by Eve Bunting, and that is Scary, Scary Halloween. This time her illustrator is Jan Brett. It's Halloween night, and a group of costumed trick-or-treaters roam the neighborhood while observed by a mysterious creature hidden away. I was so delighted to be able to find a Halloween book that is a collaboration by 2 of my favorite children's literature authors, and that's Eve Bunting and Jan Brett. Bunting's rhythmic prose coupled with Jan Brett's vibrant illustrations really capture the mood of Halloween. The children's costumes are terrific. I love the mysterious narrator and spooky vibes, and it's fun to find out who the narrator is at the end of the story. I really enjoyed this one as well, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next up is Tacky and the Haunted Igloo. This humorous picture book is written by Helen Lester and illustrated by Lynn Munsinger. It's Halloween in nice icy land, and the penguins are hosting a party in their haunted igloo. Tacky, who's a mess, has no idea what his costume will be since nothing scares him. While he's asleep, exhausted from thinking about his costume, some uninvited guests show up to the igloo and frighten the penguins. Will Tacky be able to find a costume that will help out with the uninvited guest? I guess you're going to have to read it to see. Well, Tacky is lovable, but he does have some bad habits. I think the story is really cute, and Lynn Munsinger's illustrations really add suspense and humor. I love that the penguins, with the exception of Tacky, choose costumes of things that they're afraid of. This was an entertaining read for the spooky season, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. This next book was a huge treat for me because it stars some of my favorite furry friends, and that is Scared Silly, a Halloween treat, written by James Howe and illustrated by Leslie Morrill. Halloween is usually fun for the Monroe household. On this particular Halloween, the Monroes leave Harold, Chester, Howie, and Bunnicula home alone. The night gets frightful when a strange figure visits the Monroes' lovable pets and causes the whole family to be scared silly. I adore Bunnicula, and this picture book made me so happy. The storyline is terrific. The unexpected guest adds mystery and suspense and humor. And of course, Leslie Morrill's illustrations are awesome. They're colorful. And I'm very excited to see the characters brought even more to life because of the colorful illustrations. I need to find more of these picture books. I ended up giving this story 5 stars. My last 2 books for Halloween belong to the series Tales from the House of Bunnicula, and the first book is It Came from Beneath the Bed. This is written by James Howe and illustrated by Brett Hellquist. Howie wants to be a writer like his Uncle Harold. So with Uncle Harold's guidance, he writes his first book about saving the world from a science experiment gone wrong. I've already mentioned that I adore the Bunnicula series, and I am loving this series as well. The story alternates between Howie's entries in his writing journal as well as the chapters of the story that he is writing. It is very, very humorous. I love all the information about the writing process, including the cliffhangers and the figurative language and the parts of speech. I think this book would be a great mentor text to teach children about creative writing. And let's talk about the characters. The characters are lovable. Howie is precious, and he has a friend, Delilah, who's also his love interest. The banter in between the two of them is humorous. And let's not forget about the incredible illustrations. This is definitely a 5-star read for me. The second book in the series is called Invasion of the Mind Swappers from Asteroid 6. What a cute title. Again, this is written by James Howe and illustrated by Brett Hellquist. Uncle Harold's editor agrees to publish Howie's first book if he writes another one because the first book works better in a series. Howie's second story is about how he and Delilah save the day when the Mind Swappers from Asteroid 6 invade the Earth. This one was so much fun, just as enjoyable as the first one. Again, it alternates between the entries in Howie's writing journal and the chapters of the story that he is writing. I find so much humor in these books. I love the wordplay. I love all the references to writing, and also that sometimes Howie doesn't always get the advice that is given to him by Uncle Harold. In fact, I want to share one of my favorite entries in this series so far, and it has to do with arrogance. So just a little bit of backstory. In the first book, Delilah didn't really care for the way Howie portrayed her, and she got a little upset with him. And so he was going down that route again in the second story, and he knew he probably should change it, but he was like, I'm being lazy. So he tells Uncle Harold that, and Uncle Harold, this is what he responds. So Uncle Harold said, this is not a good trait in a writer, being lazy. I reminded him, I'm an author now. And he said, I need to watch out for arrogance. I told him if I saw any coming at me, I'd duck. He didn't laugh. I just thought that was hilarious. He is so funny and he is adorable. And I really do love the relationship between he and Delilah. They're bantering. She gets upset because he does not really know how to write girl characters. I'm saying that in defense of Delilah because that's what she thinks. But their relationship is really humorous. I ended up giving this 5 stars, and I will definitely be continuing the series. My last 3 books are what I read for book clubs, and the October pick for the Cozy Cottage Book Club was Twistwood Tales by A.C. MacDonald. This is a charming compilation of short tales that is based on a webcomic of the same name. The Twisted Tales are set in the Twistwood Forest, where a bunch of quirky and endearing characters live and have all sorts of adventures while solving problems, facing fears, and exploring moral dilemmas. This collection of comics includes whimsical wordplay, incredible illustrations, fantastical elements with fairy tale vibes, and a huge cast of adorable characters. Some of my favorite characters are robber duckies, who question more sustainability of stealing, Loghead, who's exploring ways to get more sleep, and the doctor, who doles out some dubious medical treatment. The author also included a scavenger hunt at the back of the book. He has all these hidden items within the illustrations. It was so much fun. Every tale has a hidden item. I had a lot of fun looking for the items, and I still haven't found all of them. And then my book also included a pull-out map of the Twistwood Forest. This was a very whimsical read, very cozy. It had some dark humor in it and some melancholy undertones, but it really was a really fun read. I guess that's the best way I can say it. It was a really fun read. Enjoyed it with my book club and discussing it with them, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. My next book is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. This was the September-October selection for the FOMO Book Club, which is run by Jack at Spreadbook Joy and Jim of Gem of Books. This is a comedy horror novel with retail appeal, and we had an enjoyable discussion about it. It is about a furniture store called Orsk, similar to IKEA, that is experiencing some nightly vandalism. So the store manager, Basil, decides to recruit 2 of his employees, Amy and Ruth Ann, to work with him overnight to catch the vandal, but get some unexpectedly horrific results instead. First of all, I love the catalog format. The premise is quirky, clever, and unique. The attention to detail is amazing. And I love that every chapter begins with some kind of an item that is sold at the store. It begins kind of like nice items that turn a little more sinister and then turn to horror. I was pretty impressed with the overall effects of the novel. But I will say, even though I appreciated some of the elements, it was a middle-of-the-road read for me. It was pretty far-fetched, but also a fun read. I'm glad that I read it, even though it wasn't my favorite Grady Hendrix, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. My last book for October is Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This was the September-October selection for the Bookworm Club, which I run with my friend Alex at Frank Fiction. This is a horror novel. It's a coming-of-age story that takes place at an isolated orphanage. One night, the sheriff shows up at the orphanage. He has an injured man with him, and there are some circumstances that are both mysterious and unsettling. And unfortunately, because he comes to the orphanage, there are some negative consequences for the residents who live there. I absolutely love this novel. It's my first Philip Fracassi novel, but I had such a good time with it. There are multiple POVs, which I like. There are numerous characters that I was invested in. I love character-driven novels. This was a 5-star read for me. Alex and I had a wonderful discussion on my channel. So if you want to hear more of our thoughts about this fantastic book, I have left a link in the description box below. The last thing I want to mention is Fall Bookish Bingo. This was hosted by Sarah at Sarah Reads on Instagram. It took place from September the 1st through October 31st. And I'm excited to share that I completed the entire bingo board. I had so much fun seeing which prompts my books fit. There were movie prompts as well as activity prompts. It was an extra layer of enjoyment for the fall season. Well, friends, that's a wrap on everything I read during October. I had a satisfying spooky season. Many thanks to all the spooktacular hosts of these wonderful readathons. Many thanks to Kelsi for asking me to be a part of the Monster Squad for Halloween-A-Thon. Also thanks to Kaelin for buddy reading Scritch Scratch with me. What about you? What did you get up to during October? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you watching. And until our paths cross again, stay amazing and be adventurous.